George E. Darcy III.
Present.
Karen Bennett.
Present.
Kathy Ann Harris.
Present.
Randall J. LeBlanc, absent. John J. McLaughlin.
Present.
4 present. And 1 absent.
If you have the minutes.
I'm just filling in things. You guys
Yeah,
get
so-
this in your packet?
Yeah, so just for informational purposes only, it was in, the assistant clerk who regularly clerks this meeting had a family issue, so luckily the clerk has stepped in to clerk this committee meeting, so we thank him for jumping in at the last minute.
I have ordinance rules experience.
He used to do it for quite some
And he
time.
was on one,
He was, and as a
so I
counselor,
think
he was.
we have the minutes.
I don't believe we do.
No, all right, so we're doing the minutes. All right, so with that being said, we're going to, Counselor Harris moves collectively to take all of the 5 marijuana dispensary special permit applications off the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the ayes have it. Counselor Harris also moves to hear from all off-committee members, which luckily includes traffic engineer Garvin and the 2 attorneys for the city of Waltham, Solicitor Azadi and Attorney Locken. Thank you for coming here. Is anyone recording this meeting this evening? James, how are you?
Doing well.
Good, so James Kirkhouse, right?
Correct.
And your address is?
19 Gorham.
Great. Thank you very much. Anyone else recording? No? Great. So, I've got a couple of handouts. I handed out the level of service summary.
Off-committee member. We can vote on the off-committee member.
Which option?
We voted to hear from all off-committee.
Yes, we did. Oh, yeah, all those fair say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And just for bookkeeping purposes, I handed out the level of service LOS summary, which was presented at the last traffic commission meeting. My color ink went out, so it's only black and white, but the black part is actually F. You can read all the other letters, and I've given one to traffic engineer Garvin. I have also a handout, a spreadsheet of the orders for all 5 petitioners. And I used as a model the proposed order for Umer Flowers LLC. The 14 common orders that probably would be applicable to all the applicants. And then on another page that I have here, it's the unique orders that are applicable just to the particular. Great, okay, perfect.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman, they
Yes.
were all stamped into the clerk's office.
They were not, but after the meeting, I'll get the clerk to stamp them in.
Thank you very
Thank you, so they'll be an official part of the record. The next thing is that, so that's just for your reference for the committee members, just to give us some help as we navigate our way through this. And next bookkeeping, I'd like to call a special meeting of the Ordinance Rules Committee meeting for July 11th, Monday, July 11th at 6 p.m. In the council chamber to discuss and only discuss the 5 marijuana special permit applications. And that's at the call of the chair.
We vote on that, Mr. Chairman.
We can vote. Councilor Harris moves to confirm the call of the chair for July 11th. On the motion. It is a Monday. And we need 3 people of the committee to have a quorum that evening. Discussion on that date, the time, location. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. So we'll have a special meeting Monday, July 11th at 6 p.m. in the main council chamber. And again, just to discuss these matters, the marijuana applications. Next, bookkeeping. This committee asked traffic engineer Garvin to study the 3 intersections, Main and Bear Hill, Main and Stowe, Main and Border, and Winter and Second, and to come up with traffic mitigation to improve the flow of traffic through those intersections. Specifically, we asked him to look at syncing of the 3 traffic signals along Main Street and installing an adaptive traffic control technology, state-of-the-art, at those intersections, and also to look into the other intersection at Winter and Second Avenue. The traffic engineer, working with the wires director, came up with a plan and approximate cost, and he submitted that into the clerk's office by 12 noon on Thursday. And we have that. Does everyone have a copy of that? Yes. Great. To start off, I think we'd like to hear from the traffic engineer so he can give us some background information. Because to go back to the level of service summary chart that was presented by, I think it was B and C.
Yes, in there.
Yeah, it clearly shows that, that with the marijuana dispensaries, all 5, that there's a clear degradation of Winter Street and Second Ave from a C to a D, as well as Main Street to Bear Hill, a C to a D for the 5 marijuana dispensaries. And that's the thing that we'd like to improve upon. So hearing that, Councilor Harris moves to hear, well, we already made that motion.
Yeah.
So I would like traffic engineer Garvin to give us an overview of the work that you've done in the past week.
Sure, thank you, and thank you to everyone. I want to actually start off with a note of thanks to Tim Kelly for assisting me in coming up with the background data and the numbers for this in the short turnaround, so thank you to Mr. Kelly. Looking at that level of service summary, it's important to note that what I was asked to do and what I prepared is really the improvements for the existing infrastructure. So in each of the peak hours on that chart, it really only applies to that existing column, because once you get to the no build, it assumes that the 1265 project has come in and replaced the existing infrastructure with the rebuilt infrastructure. So it's really the existing condition that we're looking at. The existing bridge over the highway, Green Street is not extended down to the Route 20 rotary, and Stowe Street is not dead-ended. And there's not a new on-ramp onto the highway. So those are the kind of the main components that would be in place for the no build and the build. So the existing infrastructure, there are clear improvements that can be made in that corridor for those 3 intersections that you mentioned, Main Street at Bear Hill, at Stowe, and then at Border. The second and third of those intersections currently has a modern grid smart camera that is used for detection at those 2 signals that meets the requirements that would be the necessary detection for that adaptive signal control. But the first intersection, Main at Bear Hill, does not have a camera, and it does not have working detection of any type. There are loop detectors that are in the ground, but they're not working properly. So that intersection today is working as a pre-timed signal. So regardless of what traffic is approaching the signal, it just has a set green time, for Main Street and a green time for Bear Hill. It just cycles through that. The traffic demand doesn't enter into the time. So step 1 would be to install a new grid smart camera there at that intersection. and bring that up to date for the detection part of it. Other components are listed on the second page of the memo here. There's the necessary adaptive traffic control hardware and equipment at each of the intersections. New traffic controllers and processors. And Eagle is the brand that Mr. Kelly likes in the city and that we use in the city. Then the communication part of it would be the wireless hardware, including antennas, receivers, and all those components, and new cabinets to house all that equipment at each intersection. So in working through all the different components with Mr. Kelly, we came up with a total cost for those improvements for the 3 intersections to be about $250,000. Secondly, we were asked to look at the other end of Second Ave in Winter. We don't necessarily recommend the adaptive signal control up there as the first step. The problem that we encounter up there is there are 2 separate controllers for that intersection. So Second Ave at Winter Street eastbound, and then Second Ave at Winter Street westbound. They don't always coordinate well together. So really the first best improvement up there would be to consolidate those 2 controllers into one controller that would operate that whole signal. We don't have a cost estimate for that necessarily, but that would be the first step that we would recommend up to the north.
Right, and just for information purposes, the reason why we need to upgrade the existing technology is the fact that at best case, the redevelopment of that intersection is 3 years, and in the worst case, it could be 6 years or not even happen, so.
Worst case, it's not guaranteed to happen, it could never happen.
Right, so I think it's really imperative that we make some enhancements for those intersections so to handle the increased traffic. First on committee, Councilor Harris.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Thank you for the overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the traffic engineer. Good evening.
Good evening.
So can we go line item by line item, how we came up with the $250K? So let's go through each cost, just so that's lined out for public record.
I may not have a cost per item. If that's something the committee would like, I could get that in the future. I know we discussed it, the 2 of us, when working together, but I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, so if that's not prepared now, I would need that prepared and submitted to the clerk tomorrow, because we're going to be taking action on these numbers, and it needs to be backed up with an analysis that got you to those numbers. So I'll make that request.
Right, so we're meeting next on July 11th. How much time do you need to generate more detail? Because if it could be the Thursday before our next meeting, that would be great.
Excuse me, I have the floor, and I made the request to make it faster, because the petitioner, sorry, Mr. Chairman, but through you, I have the floor, and I'm speaking to the engineer. These petitioners that are here tonight are at a request of this committee. They have their attorneys with them. They are being charged by the hour by these attorneys. These attorneys have to prepare documentation before this committee, based on this analysis. And it has to be before us, otherwise we cannot take action and send it to our law department. That's standard practice in this committee, nothing new here, right? Special permits are handled the same way. So I'm asking, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the engineer, can these be submitted? You were given a week last week. Can these numbers be submitted to the clerk's office by tomorrow close of business?
All I need is a 30-minute meeting with Mr. Kelly. If he's in tomorrow and I can find him, then yes.
So I'm going to make that request, and I'll submit it in writing, but we need these timely, they need to be turned around, and they're not minor requests, they're driving the whole permit process. Okay,
So-
this has been holding up for quite some time.
So Councilor Harris has made a request to get a more detailed listing of the components in the process.
Line item budget, Mr. Chairman.
A line item budget containing the components that the traffic engineer has recommended for the improvements of the 4 intersections, if possible by tomorrow.
Close of business.
And on that motion, comments, requests, discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you very much.
Thank
You
you.
still have the floor, Counselor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate it. Again, through you to the engineer, you mentioned, so that this line item budget, right, it needs to be titled, you know, the three intersections that we're talking about, Main and Bear, Main and Stowe, Main and Board. The other request of this committee a week ago tonight was to look at Second Ave and Winter. And I'm taking that as a second line item because there's going to be legal requests made if those dollars aren't in place. No adaptive control, but you said improvements are needed to consolidate to one controller. So is that a hardware change through you, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, yeah, and timing,
Okay.
so, yeah,
So would that require an additional budgetary investment?
it would.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, how much additional time do you need to put together that line item budget?
So that would be a question to Mr. Kelly that he would likely, and I can't really speak for him, but he would likely give a ballpark figure for that.
Or just looking for that?
So I can ask him for that, and I would expect he would be able to give that answer.
Thank you, thank you. So I would like to make that request as well and have the timing be the same. And so if we could take that vote, but before we do, the reason for that is so that this can be released as a communication to all petitioners so that you know what the adaptive traffic changes are needed. And not because the city says so, and not because the residents of Stowe Street say so. Your businesses are on these streets. These are the main roads that your customers are going to travel to. They're gonna take these roads. So if we don't improve the traffic and we wait 6 years for 1265, you wait a long time for traffic issues, and you're gonna get complaints from your own customers relative to these issues, because they're real. Ratings of E's and F's. F is a failure, just like grade school. It's a failure. It's not passable, and an E is even worse. So those are the reasons why we've asked for these mitigations. So, Mr. Chairman, if we could take that vote to have the Second Ave and Winter intersection line item budget to address the consolidation to one controller and to put in time for setting up the timings of that controller.
Right, and just for information, that intersection is not adaptive, right?
That's not what we recommended at this
Correct.
point.
Okay, great. All right, so the counselor from Ward 8 makes a motion for the traffic engineer to provide a budget for the improvements to Winter Street and Second Avenue in reference to consolidating the two controllers at that site. On that motion, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Thank you. You still have the floor.
Thank you very much. Now, I wanted to, those two items I think are related to the traffic engineer. I do have questions for the city attorneys, but I'll defer to my colleagues on committee if there's any follow-ups to the traffic engineer.
Councilor McLaughlin.
Just very quickly, I just wanted to thank the traffic engineer and Mr. Kelly for getting us that information quickly. That's been unusual with this process. Appreciate the fact that that could not quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, one other question before we move on. So I know that this document that we have is from the traffic study. Where?
Actually, it's not. It's from the presentation of BSC at the Traffic Commission meeting. That was a PowerPoint slide.
BSC did the traffic study though, and when they were presenting their traffic study, this was part of their.
I watched it and I took a snapshot from
All
it.
right, well, okay. And so where are these from?
I wrote those.
Okay.
Just to give us a framework, we've got 5 applicants and I wanted to.
Yep, no, and I appreciate that, and the only thing I want to say for the record is just that, and I appreciate this, and I appreciate giving it more framework for us to move ahead.
Yes.
I want to make sure it's clear that these documents, we're not limiting the discussion to the issues on these
No.
documents.
It's just a guidance for.
Understood, appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Great. Do you need further comments? Okay, so you have the floor again.
Thank you very much, I appreciate it, and do appreciate all the preparation. If Engineer Gardner could stay just in case there's questions related to the city attorney. So through you to both attorneys, good evening. Hi, we meet again. I have a couple of questions related to, so just to take a step back. In many of the special permits, payment into the traffic mitigation fund is typically triggered because in these special permits, there's an increase of 5, which triggers an automatic calculation per our ordinance, which requires the petitioner to pay generally a lump sum based on the total cost of the project to the traffic mitigation fund. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
And
Based
it's
on square footage.
And it's based, in as far as the floor
Either
area
$3
ratio.
or $3 or $1 per square foot, depending on the type of use involved.
Thank you. And so if people are watching at home or the minutes are going to be drafted or someone says, well, why do we call in all the petitioners tonight? We called you in so that you can actually see that this is moving forward. We needed to wait for that traffic study to come back. It scored the intersections in such a way that mitigation is needed. It was needed before you start your business. It's going to be needed after your business is open. And we wanted you to be in tonight to hear what those changes are and how this will work going forward. So we're going to get line item budgets, but this is more insight into that process. So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorneys, there are 5 petitioners, right? And we've been given one budget of $250K, and the engineer is going to bring us back actual line item summaries. How do you recommend, because we're going to be making requests of a special permit petitioner, almost like a condition, right, to be able to mitigate the traffic, because it would be unconscionable and irresponsible to approve $1 million projects and then have no mitigation of traffic, no plan to make it better for anybody. That would be irresponsible. So how do you suggest this committee, once we get these line item budgets from the traffic engineer for the 2 areas, how do we best distribute that to the petitioners, and what should be the process under which we execute them?
I'm assuming, I have not seen the traffic study, but if you are considering all of the 5 special permits to be equally contributing to the traffic, then the best way to do it would be to have each of the special permit applicants agree voluntarily to make a payment that will go towards mitigating the expected traffic issues. It's not the traditional payment into the traffic safety and mitigation fund, so it is better to have a voluntary agreement that will cover it.
Okay, and through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorneys. So we here on the council, I mean, I'm cautious, reluctant, resistant to saying, hey, just pay into the general fund and we'll take care of the traffic. I want this to have binding authority that we are going to, as through the traffic engineer's office, actually address what we've asked these petitioners to modify their design prospectuses to put funding towards.
Right, the voluntary agreement would have to specifically state that the money being donated is to be used for specifically identified purposes. That way, when the city accepts it, it can only use them under those conditions that are specifically set forth.
Now, point of information, Mr. Chairman, there are 5 petitioners, correct, and there's 4 licenses. Can we just clarify the number of petitioners versus the number of
There are
licenses?
5 petitioners currently. There could be more in the future.
Yeah.
There's 5 currently, and they're based upon the population of Waltham. We are allowed to issue 4 licenses. The council, and then the applicants would then have to go to the mayor to get a community host agreement.
Okay.
So it's a 2-phase.
Right, so, again, I wanted to go back to the attorney for the petitioner with that being said, so I want to clarify my question to the attorney. So, through you, Mr. Chair. There are 5 petitioners, but there are 4 potential permits that we can, right now, based on our total number of liquor licenses, the percentage towards retail marijuana per state law is what we're going to be guided by. How do we, so we had recently said there were 5, so if there's 4, are we, through you, Mr. Chairman, are we to equally request that 4 petitioners, or do you make all petitioners contribute the the amount, because it's a little game of math here, right? You've got 5 petitioners, 4 licenses, but each petitioner needs to be given a fair proposal, because when it gets to you and you're weighing them, they need to all have the same consideration, otherwise one could stand out, right? So I want to make sure we word this out of this committee and send it to you with congruency for your analysis.
I think probably the best way to do it would be to have language that addresses the fact that there are only 4 permits that are going to be issued. So you'll have your percentages based on the traffic for all 5, but you'll say that the amount is to be divided amongst the actual successful applicants.
And the language would be amongst the successful applicants, not the total number of licenses.
Correct.
And to that point, if we only award 3, then
Right, then it will have to be divided amongst the 3 who are successful. That's why.
Okay, and again, this is procedural, right? We want to get our processes right. It's kind of, I'm a stickler for that stuff, because, getting this wrong at this stage is not going to be in anyone's best interest. So through you, Mr. Chair, again, to the attorneys for the petitioner, let's say we go through this process, and I'm laying this out, just so that we get the right advice and we execute correctly over the next meeting. So tonight, we're having a notice so that everybody understands what's happening. We're going to have line item budgets by our traffic engineer and working with city departments that are going to be into the clerk's office and go back to the petitioners. Can we make the request tonight without the dollar amounts in front of us, or does it make more sense, through you, Mr. Chair, to wait until those dollars are back and make that request on July 11th?
Well, we can certainly work on language without having the dollar amounts. But as far as getting the petitioners to agree to it, obviously you're going to need those figures first. We'll be able to plug those in as the process moves forward.
So you said, again, through you, Mr. Chair, you said you guys could start on draft language. That draft language would guide this committee in next week's meeting to basically be able to direct the petitioners and their attorneys to amend their documentation. And what we would be waiting for is, and I mean, you could probably include that line. The idea would be that if the budgets are coming into the clerk's office, the clerk would send them to you so that you could help draft that language and the dollar amounts, because I hate to get the language right and the math wrong. Not that I'm not bad at math, but just, I always go to the higher authority. You're a great guidepost with the engineer for this kind of work. So are you guys okay with doing that? Drafting that language ahead of us for the June 11th?
We should be able to do that.
Okay. So my other question here, and again, this is about process. So what are we trying to do here? So take a step back of like how we got here. There was a concern and incongruency across all the petitioners in the traffic studies. Those traffic studies required us to get a peer review, right? That peer review took too long in everybody's opinion, and I certainly concur. It was difficult to get the bids and the responses back, and it took 8 months. During that time, I am going to say what I appreciate. I appreciate petitioners hanging in there, because we know that this is happening at great expense to you, that you're paying rent, that you're paying attorneys, that you're trying to secure additional opportunities for your business and to try to do business in Waltham. And this committee in no way, and I'm sure other councilors will speak on this tonight, this committee in no way looks past that. We're deeply appreciative that you want to start your business here in Waltham, and we do apologize for this delay. What we're trying to do right now is, on a night where we have council committee council, is we pushed last week, as soon as the traffic report came back to us, to have the engineer come in, create the mitigations, have you come in, hear that mitigation is coming, have our attorneys here, so that the attorneys can help us draft language that you and your attorneys would consider and prepare. And then, if we can decide at next week's meeting if another meeting is warranted to basically review your prospectuses and move them to the law department. Because what will happen here, as a matter of procedure, is we've got to weigh this information from our attorneys, have you guys have exact language and amounts that you can amend into your petitions, and then this committee has to see that red line drafted into your documentation as part of the process. And then we would deliberate and make a motion, right? But July 11th is going to be more of the language and the amounts, and then I think there's going to be another cycle to basically get there. And I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, but I'm certainly And I don't think any of those committees try to delay anything. We're certainly willing to make, even though council will be done tonight, this committee will not be. And it's through the commitment of these counselors here that we're willing to meet until we can get your items moved forward to the law department in such a way that they're in the right form for consideration. And the law department works while we're on summer recess. And, you know, I want to get that on the record and understanding. So from what I've said, just in that explanation, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorneys, is there anything that I've said that's incomplete? No, I'm sorry, you guys are sidebar. I was coming at you with a question. Is there anything in the timeline or anything that I said that raises concern? Are we following the right process? What your expectations are of this committee to basically move these things forward even outside of regular council meetings?
I think that what you're doing is appropriate, and again, you want to get this to the petitioners' attorneys as soon as possible to make sure it's language that they're going to be comfortable with, because it is going to be voluntarily agreed to work, since it doesn't follow the ordinance provisions relating to the regular traffic safety and infrastructure maintenance fund payments. Attorney, well, you just indicated another thing that we can do with respect to it, and that's have these payments also referenced in the host community agreements. But I'd still recommend that they be part of the special permit process to make sure that it's clear that we already have that voluntary buy-in.
Okay.
So, can I interject just for one point?
Yes, Mr.
To that point, are all 5 petitions here this evening? You raise your hand if you're a petitioner. 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm representing 2. I'm representing
Okay,
the
great.
government.
Have each of you submitted a draft order?
Yes,
You've done 2?
yes.
And
I believe so.
so could you check and make sure, if you haven't, can you get that into us?
I'll have to check.
You have, because I've read yours.
Okay.
And then in the background,
I think so.
could you check and make sure that you've submitted a draft order, because we need that to move forward. Thank you.
And now that you've mentioned that, I mean, obviously, the sooner we get the draft orders, the sooner we can go through those with all of the plans that have been presented, or make sure that all of the other issues that generally apply to special permits are being satisfied. Yes.
Thank you, Counselor. Thanks.
Oh, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to, you know, kind of create set the table and discuss the process and make sure. So let me just, so that is our timeline, and you know, I think we're going to take this one meeting at a time until we can get these petitions to law department, because we've got to do that. We cannot go into summer break. And so I'm going to, without that moving forward. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you is, then, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorneys for the petitioner, for the city, I guess, you know, the other thing is, hypothetically, we move these, you know, we have a meeting on the 11th and documentation is changed, and then we hypothetically have another meeting where, you know, we move things to the law department. Is it acceptable for this committee to also make a request of a time-bound response from your offices to basically to review these, you know, by the fall at some point, or, you know, because, I mean, it's like, otherwise we run into another shot clock, right? And that these extensions are way.
Yeah, obviously, we already heard the time extension
Yes, you helped with
in
it.
the city council.
Thank you.
Okay.
So we are aware of the deadlines for these, but again, the sooner things get to us, the faster we'll be able to handle them, because we also have to make sure there are other items coming into the law department on an emergency basis that we might have to set this aside for to work on. So the more time we have, the better.
Okay, so, you know, in summary, through you, Mr. Chairman, to the attorneys, you know, Engineer Garvin has his swim lane of getting the line item budgets for the 2 intersections and the recommendations line item to the clerk by close of business, and then out to all petitioners and the law department tomorrow timely. Through you, Mr. Chairman, our law department and our legal minds are going to draft legal language to incorporate those dollar amounts into a 4-way split, because those are the total number, and each petitioner would put that amount into their
Point of information would be
It's not-
proportional.
proportional.
Yeah.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. So it's used for the successful applicants. You're gonna draft that language?
Yes.
Okay. then that language plus the amounts will be used by the attorneys for the petitioner to basically turn around documentation, then we need to meet, consider that, and make a recommendation whether or not to move that to August. Okay, would you be willing to attend another meeting in case there are questions? I mean, I know you're gonna bring draft language, but could you be at the next meeting on the 11th?
Yes.
Okay, great, because I think that's important, so I'll make that request.
So Counselor Harris moves to have the two attorneys for the city, Solicitor Fasadi and Lockman, attend the July 11th meeting at 6 o'clock. On that motion, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And then one other further, I make a request that could the traffic engineer also be there on the 11th, because the numbers will be new. We will have brought them in, they will be communicated by email, so in case there's any questions at all. Plus, I think it shows a strong commitment from our traffic department that we're going to work with these petitioners. I make that request if the engineer can make the 11th.
Unfortunately, I'm out of town on vacation that week.
Could your assistant?
I could assign him to, yes.
So
Make that request.
Counselor Harris moves to invite the assistant traffic engineer to the July 11th meeting at 6 o'clock. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Thank you. I'm truly appreciative again of the traffic engineer, this committee, attorneys for the petitioner, and attorneys for the city, and then all the attorneys and the petitioners for coming in tonight. These are the extent of my questions. Other colleagues may have questions, but I hope this makes very clear the intent to move the ball forward for the petitioners and what our plan is, and it's step by step. So we're not promising 5 meetings. We're trying to get this done on the 11th and possibly something thereafter to this week. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Nothing further.
Counselor McLaughlin, thank you.
Mr. Chairman. So, just so I'm clear on this, the July 11th meeting will be posted to just discuss these 5 special.
Correct, nothing else.
Nothing else, okay, thank you. Second thing is through you to the clerk pro tem. To revisit the, I brought this question up last week. So we have extensions for everybody. We're not going into, we're not ending tonight without extensions for everybody that's in play, correct?
All 5 have been extended.
They're all extended till at least early October.
Yes.
Okay, and that, my concern isn't about when, it's that it's beyond our next meeting in August, so I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Counselor Dunn.
Yes, this is a point of order. We do have a communication from the attorney for 1254 Main Street tonight with a new plan. Is it appropriate for us to ask about this at this meeting now, about what the changes are? It says a floor plan showing a smaller building situated on the lot.
Sure, do you have a request to share there?
Right here.
Yes, if you wouldn't mind just explaining what the differences are from the last.
Yeah, the building was, it was a much bigger footprint, so we narrowed the footprint and we created a second floor to kind of pick up some workspace. So the footprint of the building, I wasn't sure if we were going to discuss it tonight, but I could get for the July 11th meeting, I can give you a kind of a breakdown. But the footprint of the building is dramatically changing. So we're trying to make the building much smaller so it could fit on the site. I mean, it fit on the site before, but it was basically about traffic flow and things like that, so.
And through you, Mr. Chair, to the attorney, remind me if this was a newly built building or a renovation?
Originally, it was going to be a renovation, so now there's going to be a complete demolition. So it's going to be a brand-new building. There is a building there today.
Okay, then I would request, Mr. Chair, that the attorney bring, a small presentation to update us on the change in the building for the July 11th.
Great, so Counselor Dunn moves to get a presentation on the changes from, this is 1254.
Correct, yes. 1254, 1256 Main.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it, thank you. 1 minute. Would Counselor Dunn take the chair for a minute?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there a matter before us?
Yeah, I'd like to just address, I read one of the draft proposed orders, and there were 4 special conditions that were particular to that one site. And the order referenced a memo from Wade Putnam. And what I'd like to say to that petitioner, and to all the petitioners, that if you're putting in language in the order to not reference an external memo from a department head that if it's of substance, then it should be described in the language of the order and then referenced on the plan. Because those are the only two things that get recorded, the plan and the draft order. And I know in one petition, there were 4 items with a reference to an email from Wade Putnam, and so that needs to be reworked. The other thing I would call is that and I would like to request that, and this is just my request as a member of the committee, that the bicycle racks have an order that references the proposed, and the reason for that is that we want to, we obviously want, and many of you have agreed to install, but we want you to install and maintain those bicycle racks. So that should be specific order referencing the plan and the name that you put on the bike racks. The second is the concrete sidewalks and granite curbings. They should be described as in order and then referenced on the plan. And in particular, we want the sidewalks to be the full length of your site, so as Second Ave and Bear Hill Ave gets redeveloped, that those sidewalks will eventually connect with one another. So we just don't want sidewalks in the interior part of your site. We want them the full length of your parcel. The third item that I recommend is that that a lot of people that take cannabis products have service dogs or service animals, and I personally would like to see a sign on your site that says all service animals welcome, so that the many people that have them will feel at ease. The fourth item I'd like to point out is that we don't want the petitioner to lease, rent, or offer for free the use of the parking spaces at your site. And that should also be in order. So we want those parking spaces reserved for your employees and the customers, not for storing vehicles or trucks or any other thing. And then the fifth one was the traffic mitigation order, which the law department's going to help us craft. That's all I have. Thank you,
Thank you.
Chair Pro Tem.
Thank you. Back to you.
No, you can run the rest of the meeting.
What's left on our?
What's left?
I move to table what we have.
Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Excuse me, Councilor Katz. You can run.
Oh, okay, thank you. The chair calls Councilor Katz. Committee member.
I'll be very quick. I just had 2 quick requests. Would it be appropriate if the applicants that are here tonight just identify which properties they are here representing, just so I can see who is here?
Sure, that's reasonable. Would you, Mr. Powers, would you like?
I represent this gentleman here, and he will identify himself. He's a Waltham cannabis petitioner at 1254, 1256 Main Street.
Hi, Damon Schmidt.
I also represent Middlesex Integrative Medicine. They're at 305 Second Avenue. The petitioner couldn't make it tonight, but they asked me to come and represent them.
Okay, and would you tell us the name of the petitioner?
Middlesex Integrated
Oh.
Medicine.
So it's an LLC, right?
Yeah, I think it's a corporation,
Okay, thank you.
Inc.
Philip Silverman here for Broad Cultivation and Dispensary. This is Anthony Cardillo, Sevilla.
Hi, Taylor Patel, Uma Flowers, I'm the co-founder, 196 Bear Hill Road.
I'm Pat Smith, Floor Holdings, 221 Bear Hill Road.
Thank you. And point of order, if myself and the at-large counselor who aren't able to hear 1254, 1256 because we weren't on council, attend the meeting on July 11th with the presentation, will that enable us to vote on that or not? Does that make sense? Because currently we aren't, but if we attend the presentation that Councilor Dunn requested, does that change things?
No, you had to participate in all of the hearings.
Okay, thank you.
So-
And just a point of order, that presentation is simply just the change in the building
Yeah,
design.
yeah. I just wanted to confirm. Thank you.
Thank you. Any new matters, Mr. Clark?
No.
I move to table the collective matters.
And you had matters recommitted. Was there anything you wanted to do on any of those that got recommitted?
Motion to table.
After we table.
Oh, after you table.
Okay, so you've heard a sense of the motion to table the meeting, the presentation from tonight to July 11th. And all those in favor?
Aye.
And opposed? The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for coming in tonight.
Thank you.
The only other thing, Mr. Chairman, was the other matters that were recommitted.
Oh, understood.
No, I just wanted to refer to them when you advertise.
I didn't know.
We have 36 River Street, they sent an extension. No, the Verizon,
That's done, yeah, you did that.
That's done.
I think everything.
I think we're up to
36 River Street, did Attorney Zadi give you more information before you could prepare your legal?
Yeah, so, council has done,
You guys approved 36 River Street.
That's-
We moved on it, and that
Yeah, I know.
email came after the fact, I think. Sorry, sorry.
Yeah.
So we're good?
I
The
guess,
train left the station.
Okay.
all right.
Motion to adjourn.
Before we finish,
Yeah.
can we take the matter from April 12th, 2021, large family daycare from the table?
So moved, so moved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, through you to the clerk, do you have an idea of where we've left this?
I think it was sent to the law department. I think
I
Attorney
saw the
Sadi
response.
gave responses. Now it's up to the committee to make whatever amendments I think it wants to make in response. to
And
the-
again, I don't have it in front of me. Was it language for an ordinance change?
It's no, it would be,
Yes.
it was language for no, yeah.
I think-
I believe so, but I wouldn't want to swear to it. I did it back in December.
It was, the issue was, there were two versions, I believe, that we could approve, and you suggested, or you made suggestions that you may want to do this type of language or this type of language, and that's what, it just got tabled after that discussion.
All right, so I don't, it doesn't sound like we're up to speed on something to send out tonight. I know.
We could do it on the summer meeting.
Correct, yeah, no, we can do that. Mr. Chair, I asked that you recognize the Ward 6 council, this was his.
Yes, and it says resolution, so we don't have to make a motion, you can speak on
Do you stand or?
No,
No, you
Okay.
No, I understand.
So the issue was there, we had two separate paragraphs. The clerk provided the language, it is set up to be, it's set up to be approved if the committee wishes. One talked about six children, and one had 10 children. There was one sentence that, based on the recommendation from Attorney Zadi, that we incorporated into it. But the resolution as is with the, I forget the scheduled table of uses, it's all set up to be approved. So I guess at the summer meeting, you guys can take a look at it. I think it's just between all the marijuana resolutions and all that stuff, I think you guys have just been so late doing that, there really wasn't a good time to do that. But I think it's all set, so listen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I would ask if the clerk can make sure that when we get the packets for the August meeting, that last bit of documentation, including because I just went to go pull it up, but I couldn't go that far back. If the clerk could provide that to us prior to the August meeting, if everything's in order, then we can take a look at pushing it out for a first reading.
Motion to adjourn from Councilor Harris at 9:52.
I please hand that back on the table.
Counselor McLaughlin moves to lay that matter back on the table. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it. Counselor Harris moves to adjourn at 9:50,
And 18.
10:18.
10:18.
Hold on.
Actually, I think it's
Time go.
6:50.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the ayes have it.
Oh, my God.